Oh, it finally happened. The thing I've always feared, that moment in every Warhammer 40k player's life. I finally need to buy Space Marines. Yeah, so I lost a bet. A very expensive bet, it turns out. The details aren't particularly important. I made a prediction. I promised that if I was wrong, I would buy, build, paint, and play with 2,000 points of Space Marines. Suffice to say, I'm making this video. It obviously didn't go well for me. And this is a big deal for me in a way. I've been collecting Warhammer armies since 2004, but I've never collected Space Marines. This is unusual in the 40k community. Space Marines are by far the most popular force in the game. They are frequently featured in expanded Warhammer 40k media. They often come in starter boxes for 40k. They are without a doubt one of the most popular parts of the 40k setting. There are no less than 10,000 books written in the Games Workshop Black Library set in the perspective of a Space Marine. They have never not featured in a 40k video game to my knowledge, though we'll see if Darktide changes that. But you get it. They are the poster boys of this setting. They are pretty beloved by the fan base. And I don't like them. This isn't just my inherently contrarian nature speaking either. I think that they're pretty boring. Space Marines are the protagonists of 40k, and protagonists have never really been my jam. Ever since I was a child playing Crash Bandicoot and rooting for Neocortex, I have always preferred the villains. They just have more pathos. Usually villains are doers. They seek to change their context. They are more often active participants in a story. They tend to have opinions on things and are frequently shaped by the system around them. Protagonists, in contrast, generally seek to protect the status quo. This is probably me just simply intellectualizing the preference, though. It's more likely that I grew up in the 90s and was therefore indoctrinated by the various incredible villain songs in Disney animations. And Space Marines are kind of villainous in the setting of 40k. They are meant to be the armored fist of a theocratic autocracy, but in truth, that's not how they're coded. They're very much portrayed as heroic, blank slate super soldiers fighting the good fight. It's this quality that makes them so popular, and that makes sense in a game like Warhammer 40k, which has historically emphasized customization and personalization of armies. This is why when I first began collecting Warhammer 40k miniatures, I avoided Space Marines. I preferred to play the more explicitly political and evil, and to me, more complex Inquisition. And this put me on a pathway to collect 8 armies throughout my Warhammer 40k career, and yet not a single Space Marine in sight. Until now. Okay, so I've gotta get 2,000 points of Space Marines. This is now my obligation. This is my task. That's going to be a lot of Space Marines, to say the least. This, by the way, isn't the right way to go about things. I would never recommend that anyone just jump into an army like this. For the record, just buy a combat patrol, at most, play some games, and see how you feel. Alas, I have written some checks that now my ass must cash. Now, normally I would simply 3D print 2,000 points or buy secondhand models if I was looking to do something like this. And that's honestly what I've done in the past with, for example, my Sisters of Battle army. But in this case, I want to build and paint the entire army for myself in a video. And I want the models to be official Games Workshop models that could be played with in a Games Workshop store. And to be honest, I have a bit of an ulterior motive for this video. I'm incredibly curious to see how much it would cost a new hobbyist to purchase a full 2,000 points worth of Space Marines. I'm hoping that this video is informative for new players or for anyone thinking of just jumping in at the deep end. Let me be the canary in the coal mine for you. But all that said, I'm aware this is going to be expensive, and that scares me a little. I've saved quite a bit of money from living with my parents a lot this year, but I'm almost certain that this expenditure is going to wipe that out. To be frank, I don't have a lot of money to spend, so I need to get my army as cheap as possible. So that means taking advantage of as many discounts as I can get, and building an army list that is as economical as possible, which will be tough because, well, Warhammer is incredibly expensive. So before we start building the army list, we have to go through some caveats and talk about the parameters of the army that I'm about to build. Firstly, I'm going to have to decide whether or not I'm going to go for the old school Firstborn Space Marines or the new style Primaris, or a mix of both. For those who don't know, Space Marines are basically two armies smushed into one. On the one hand, you have the older Firstborn miniatures that are squat and silly and old school. They're more grimdark and fantastical. Then, on the other hand, you have the Primaris that are more of a tactical, modern style Space Marine, and the miniatures here are built to be true scale, to better represent how Space Marines are meant to be proportioned in the lore. Yes, this is basically a range refresh. Yes, Games Workshop could have just simply replaced all the old school Firstborn miniatures with Primaris miniatures, and no one would have had too much of an issue. But you know, this way it means the Space Marine players would have to buy a second army if they want the most up-to-date stuff. So, I'm at a bit of a crossroads here. I much prefer the vibe and style of the old school Firstborn Marines. They are the iconic version of Space Marines to me. They're what I grew up with. On the other hand, the models look pretty bad. The proportions look a little bit cartoonish these days. They just don't really work as well, and the model line is kind of on the way out. I feel like they're going to get moved to a farm upstate any day now, and I want this army to be relevant in the next few years. Primaris, on the other hand, they are the future. They are proportioned well. I like the size and scaling of their models, but I don't like the tactical, modern direction Games Workshop have taken with them. These feel less grimdark Future Knights and more like Seal Force 9000. Likewise, Games Workshop took a bizarre design decision with all of the Primaris vehicles and equipped them with hover technology, which traditionally has never really quite been part of the design language of the Imperium, outside of very specific exceptions. Hovering vehicles were always the parlance of Xenos and aliens, but no more, I guess. Personally, I don't like the hover vehicles, and as miniatures, they look more awkward from a practical perspective. I already collect Dark Eldar. I have dealt with enough flight stands to last me a lifetime. So both have their ups and downs, but I think a Primaris force will probably be the way I go. I'm just going to try and pick out the models that I like the look of the most and avoid vehicles where I can. Okay, and the next big choice is choosing which chapter to play. Space Marines split themselves according to chapters, and there are a lot of different chapters for Space Marines. A lot. Many of these chapters have their own supplement books, their own models, their own rules. They can be pretty comprehensive. Now, truth be told, I'll likely be creating my own chapter and color scheme. It's just what I enjoy doing in Warhammer 40k. But I'll probably be making them a successor chapter, so I'll be taking the rules and models of an official chapter, but painting the army with a color scheme of my choosing. Now, there's a few chapters of note, some that stand out to me. Dark Angels are kinda neat. They have a bit of a dark, foreboding vibe. I've also always had a bit of a soft spot for the Iron Hands, but they don't really get anything unique to them. I'm not hugely into the furry subculture, so I'm probably going to be discarding the Space Wolves. And I'm going to be honest, I'm being very, very tempted by the Black Templar. They've always been my favorite chapter. They feel the most villainous of all the Space Marine chapters. They explicitly worship the Emperor, they take their design language from ancient knights and crusaders, and they have a little bit of a burn them all policy when it comes to heretics. And let's be real here, they have the best haircuts in all of 40k. Nice. And okay, sure, they also have the cool Space Marine model in the form of Grimaldus. So we're gonna go Black Templars. Okay, finally! Let's build an army. Now, I have a few things I need to do here. I need to get to 2,000 points, but I don't want to cheat and make it primarily a vehicle army to minimize painting time. For one, I'm going to need to paint these models, and I hate painting vehicles. But I also want this to be a real army. I'm not necessarily competitive mind, but I want it to be varied and not skewed in one direction. We're also going to be a little bit limited here because I'm going to want to buy bundles. The core of this army will probably be based around a Black Templar combat patrol because, well, it's probably the best value, but we'll maybe need to look into that. I also want the army to be relatively easy to paint. I'm going to be painting all these at once in a single sit-down, 2,000 points Space Marine army building bonanza. That means I want to keep it simple. Now, I'm lucky here. Space Marines are designed to be easy to paint. They are designed for beginners. They have tons of flat surfaces and lots of ignorable details, so that's good. I don't really think we can go wrong here with that, but we'll find out in the video when I go to paint them. And with that, I think we're ready to build a list and buy some models. But first, really quickly, remember earlier how I said 2,000 points of Space Marines would be incredibly expensive to buy? It's spooky season, my dudes! My favorite time of the year! And this means that it's time to watch horror movies while I paint my miniatures. Yes! But unfortunately, I'm trapped in Ireland, which means that I only get to see Irish horror movies, which are all exclusively about English landlords stealing your roof. They're pretty terrifying, but I've seen them all. Luckily, I've recently discovered that other countries make horror movies too. But how do I get to watch them? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, Surfshark, I'm able to watch horror movies from other countries, and you can change country at a click of a button and get access to the biggest movie catalog on Netflix and other streaming websites. It's pretty awesome. Surfshark is an app and browser extension that hides your location from nefarious forces online. They even encrypt your data, making sure that you're totally anonymous. Can't catch me, Hasbro! I could be anywhere. That's why it's a VPN. It's a virtual private network. Very exclusive. And this will protect you from things like localized pricing, where companies will charge you prices based on the location of the device that you're using, rather than just on what's fair and normal. And if you do subscribe to Surfshark, your subscription can be used on unlimited devices. So one subscription for your computer, for your phone, and you can even share it with friends. I'm just kidding. We're wargamers. We don't have friends. We have adversaries. So avoid personalized ads and browse without a trace on Surfshark. Use the code DISCOURSE for 83% off and an extra 3 months for free. It's a pretty wild deal. There's a link in the description of this video. Be sure to use that so that Surfshark know you were sent by me. It's so easy to change country, just at the click of a button. And that should take a little bit of a dent out of the price, hopefully. All right, we're ready to go. And we're gonna be using Battle Scribe, my old nemesis. So first things first, I think we wanna check the Black Templar Combat Patrol. That's really gonna be the soil by which our shrubberies grow. So let's have a look at it now. Okay, so the Black Templar Combat Patrol comes with 17 miniatures. We're gonna get the Primaris Marshal, Primaris Crusader Squad. We're gonna get 5 Intercessors, 1 Primaris Impulsor, and then an upgrade frame and a transfer sheet that we don't really care about. Let's create our roster. This will be called Discourses of Folly. So what's a marshal, actually? I'm not actually sure. Okay, so it's called a marshal in the combat patrol, but it's actually just a Space Marine captain with a certain loadout. And we have immediately failed at our goal to avoid all hover vehicles if possible. Unfortunately, the Repulsor is a new Primaris style vehicle. I think we're just gonna have to eat that. And we can pick that up for £72 on discount. And that puts us at 478 points with that combat patrol. So not a bad start at all. Now, next up, we're gonna have a little look at the Black Templar Army Box. So, the Army Box for the Black Templars came out in October of last year, and it arrived, I think, at around £125. Now, it was pretty notorious for being terrible value and just not worth it at all. You only got a couple of miniatures inside. But, as a result of that, it didn't sell very well, which means that any boxes that are still floating around out there are probably very cheap. So, let's have a look and see how cheap we can get it for. Okay, so we've found a box for £85, which is a substantial discount on the army box, which I think makes it, to be honest, probably still not really worth it. Inside the box itself, we're gonna get another captain, so we're kind of doubling down a little bit there. We get an Emperor's Champion, we're gonna get 10 Crusaders, and a Redemptor Dreadnought as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's any Intercessors there, so we're actually gonna get less in this than we do in the Combat Patrol. Now, it will come with the Black Templar Codex supplement book, which is good, because we're gonna need that anyway. I think it's probably worth it to pick this up. So let's see how many points then we get with this on top. All right, so we add the Primaris Crusade Squad, Redemptor Dreadnought, Emperor's Champion. All right, and that brings us to 941 points. So we're almost halfway there already. Not bad. So I tell you what, we're gonna be a little bit cheeky here. We're gonna pick up Grimaldus. Now, I know we're just a successor chapter, but we'll just rename him something else, and we'll just use his rules and his points cost. I really like Grimaldus. I really like the miniature. I think it's one of the best miniatures in the entire Space Marine line. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to get him and his little retinue. So Grimaldus costs around £30, and he is 140 points. So he's a pretty good money to points ratio for us. And on discount, we can get him for even cheaper. We're gonna get him for £23. Not bad. And with Grimaldus at it, we're at 1,081 points. Not bad. So it feels weird now not to have any main battle tanks, and we're already at 1,000 points. So let's have a little look at some of the vehicles. Okay, so I've been scrolling through the Space Marine vehicles, trying to pick one. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm just not a big fan of a lot of the newer Space Marine vehicles at all. I don't like the Gladiator. I don't like the hover technology. I don't like the way they've got little tracks at the bottom of the vehicles. It's just not to my taste. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna go for the old classic. We're gonna go for the Predator tank. And bonus, because it's an older model, it means it's gonna be cheaper than the other tanks as well. So that's good. All right, it's gonna be £31 for the Predator. Okay, that's bringing us to 1,200 points. I think we're going to need some more troops. Now, I know we have two 10-man squads of Primaris Crusaders, but really, to be honest, they're going to be a big blob of heavy melee troops. I think we're going to need some ranged infantry. Something a little bit more mobile that can take and hold objectives. So we have some intercessors. Let's take some heavy intercessors as well. So we're going to take 5 of them. It's going to be £32 for those 5 heavy intercessors, which is a pretty steep price point. I don't feel too great about that, but they are going to add 140 points. So that's going to get us a little bit closer to 2,000. All right, and next up, this is the model I've been looking forward to adding. I want to add a Justiciar. I am a big fan of this model. I've seen it around here and there, but I kind of want one myself. And I think that they really fit the aesthetic of the Black Templar. A lot of skulls in this army. All right, so let's look up the Justiciar. I'm actually not too sure about how many points he costs. I don't know how much he'll cost to buy. I'm guessing around £20 or so. Let's have a look. All right, so this is weird. Whenever you type in Justiciar to the Games Workshop website, the only thing you get is the Honored of the Chapter box. I've done a little Googling around. It turns out this is the only place it's available in. Oh no. This is a £90 box for 9 models. Oh, I do not feel good about this. Okay, so let's see what you get inside here. This is the Honored of the Chapter box. Okay, so you get a Chaplain, you get a Justiciar, you get a Blade Guard Ancient, a Blade Guard Veteran, and Eradicators as well. So let's add these to our army list and see how many points we get to. We'll add everything except for the Primaris Chaplain. We don't need another Chaplain, we've already got Grimaldus. Alright, so let's add these all in and let's see what points we get to. Okay, so if we add all of them in, we get to 1,761 points, which actually isn't bad. Not to mention that we will need units like the Eradicators. They're a bit of heavy support, which we're kind of lacking at the minute. We get a couple more elites and some melee and the Blade Guard Ancients as well to help support the Crusader squads. I've been won over to this box. Okay, so against my better judgment, we're gonna do it. We're gonna spend the £90 on this box, and I can't find it discounted anywhere, so it's gonna cost us £90 RRP as well. Does not feel great, but we are very close to being finished. And in fact, I think one more unit should really cap us off. So what are we gonna pick up? Let's be super cheeky here. We are allowed 1 agent of the Imperium in a Space Marine list. Let's do it. Let's add an Inquisitor. Specifically, we're gonna add Inquisitor Greyfax. She is a further 90 points. Now, I found a really cool model from Cromlech that I think will really represent Inquisitor Greyfax. I'm not the biggest fan of the default Greyfax model, and hopefully within the hordes of Space Marines that I have in this army, if I ever play with this army at a Games Workshop store, none of the employees will notice that there is a third-party miniature secreted away amongst them. Alright, so this Inquisitor model only costs around £13. So, not bad. But if we were to buy the official model, it would cost us £18. So, not a huge difference there. Alright, yeah, so we're gonna have an Inquisitor leader. What can I say? I can't help myself. Okay, and I think how we're going to work this out is thematically, this Space Marine chapter is going to be Servants of the Inquisition. So that brings us to 1,851 points, which is a really nice place to be. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fiddle around with a bunch of my options, my weapon options, kind of see what kind of weapons I can bring to bear and see where I get to. Okay, and so adding a bunch of different options on, I've gotten to 1,996 points, which to me feels close enough to 2,000 points. And then on top of that, we're gonna add the Space Marine Codex, which will cost around £26. So, overall then, that comes to £372. Converted to dollars, that would be $420. And for that, we got 1,996 points. If I had bought everything at full retail price, it instead would have been a lot more expensive. In fact, I would have paid £465.50, which works out at $525. And that's before Games Workshop's strange American tax, where they make everything in America cost more. That is almost 100 quid more. That is so much more money. So the discounts really saved me a lot here. Yikes. Needless to say, I do not recommend buying a full 2,000 points worth of Space Marines as your introduction to Warhammer 40k. Though if you, for some god-forsaken reason, want to, you'll be able to find links in the description of this video to all the discounted miniatures that I purchased. Those are affiliate links as well, so it helps the channel out if you do go through those. I guess all I gotta do now is wait.
The following Thursday.
Okay, so here they are. Most of the Space Marines have arrived. Okay, so how do I feel about this? Honestly, not great. I don't feel good about it. The cost of buying these models was substantially more than I'm comfortable paying. I would not recommend this for people at all. This was an incredibly irresponsible decision. I could have bought a PS5 with that money, or a bed, which I really need to get, so there's that. I'm not sure how much fun I'm going to have playing this army either, and I've also set myself up to paint them all in a single day, and I know what that entails, so that's gonna be a lot of work. Not to mention, I'm gonna be living on nothing but porridge for a while, so expect to see more ad integrations on the channel for a bit. On the other hand, though, I think I've learned a lot about myself. This entire video, this entire project has made me reflect a little, and it's made me realize something about myself. I think I ascribed a moral value to my dislike of Space Marines. I think I made it part of my personality a little. So I feel like this was a moment of growth for me. I've been able to get over myself a little bit here. So basically this was, what, £372 worth of therapy? Which is a bit of a bargain when you think about it. Now all I need to do is build these and paint them. So that'll be fun. So if you want to follow the journey, check out this video here, and I'll see you there. If that video isn't out yet, it'll be something else. And a huge thanks to Sonic Bread and to all my patrons who enable me to do this absolutely, completely irresponsible thing, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!